Hey everyone, it's Danielle and Brie, and we're going to dive right into this week's episode all about femininity, the constructs, the stereotypes, and the all-encompassing definition and meaning to that famous F word. So if you are somebody who would like to lean into their own femininity and further explore how it's connected to their self-worth or authenticity, then you're going to want to stick around for this episode or share it with somebody that you know that will resonate with that. So let's get into it.
Okay, so let's start it off with a question.
All right, I like questions.
Because femininity is such an interesting topic, I feel like, for really anyone. I think that in today's day and age, it's a term that's thrown around in so many genres.
Yes.
And to really hone it in for yourself as an individual can probably be like a little challenging. You question things. It's a little confusing, a little unclear. So I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay. Love it. Love that.
What would you, or how would you say, it's going to be a two-part question.
Okay.
Part one, how would you, for yourself only, not for everyone, but only for yourself,
Okay.
how would you define femininity? Number one. And then number two, where do you feel in life, whether it be current, in the past, or just generally speaking, do you feel like you've struggled with like truly tapping into, honing onto, or like maintaining the true essence of what you believe that is for you?
That feels like 5 questions to me.
Well,
Let's start with the first part.
Answer them, yet. No, I'm kidding.
And what was the beginning part of that question? What does femininity mean to me?
Yeah, like how would you define it? Like how, like, because leading up to this episode, I have been thinking about this question so much. Like, femininity is such a broad term.
It is such a broad term.
And so how would I define it is actually extremely challenging. So I'm like,
so true.
Now that I've been challenged all day, it's your turn.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting is because when I think of femininity, I think of normally I think of in visual terms because that's also just the type of learner that I am. It's a very visual person. So naturally I want to visually define what that means to me. And I feel like it's so easy to connect femininity to that visual perspective of what we see, like beauty, of course, that definition. So to me, I would normally just say, oh, femininity means long hair, flowing skirts. And then there's those attributes that go along with those, like kindness and softness and female almost, you know what I mean? It's like,
for sure.
I think that femininity is so interconnected, even culturally. And maybe that's where my definition had come from. Because also, if you were going to ask me these questions, like even 5 years ago, my definition of femininity and representation of that would be so different than how I feel now.
Yeah.
Whereas now I almost see femininity as an essence. But if you asked me a little bit before, it would definitely be a visual representation of like a woman or female.
And how you physically or visually represent yourself.
Yeah, like I would say skirt over pants, heels over, or high heels over kitten heels, like or flats, you know? Right. So I would probably say my definition of it definitely now is the essence.
But by the way, just a quick interjection there, because you said back in the day it would be high heels over kitten heels.
Oh, it'd always be high heels.
But in case anybody's wondering, she's currently wearing gardening Crocs.
They're stylish Crocs.
On her, like right now, at this very moment, she's wearing dirty.
And what are you wearing?
Your shoes.
You are. They're
leather,
really cute.
If anyone wants to see.
Wicker shoes. Those are inspired by my Oma though. And she's a powerful female presence in my life.
I'm just saying, it was funny that you made the comment about the heels, and I'm like, here she is, Miss Femininity, wearing her dirty gardening Crocs.
They're clean. Yeah. They're beige. They're not supposed to be white.
It's okay. Continue.
Briana,
I love you.
I thought you'd be impressed with how clean they are.
Of course I am. I'm impressed with everything about you.
What's the second part of this question? I already forget.
The second part of the question is like where do you struggle with like really honing in on that in your life?
I would now say energetically, I
Right.
struggle with femininity because I've been raised in more of like a masculine environment. Like my parents are both German, and
Like
I think
from Germany.
from Germany.
Just to-
yeah. And I think that productivity and like efficiency is a very valued characteristic, like to always do. And even now, like my parents are very busy people. Like I don't know how they do it. They cram a million things before noon. And I'm just like, where do you rest? But it's funny because I feel like I almost have to train myself now to learn how to embody the more feminine qualities, which that being like rest and being a little bit slower and go with the flow. Like I'm a very A-type person, so I need to know exactly what I'm doing. It comes down to everything like cooking, cleaning, my schedule, my kids. Like I need to know almost everything. So even like borderline, maybe fully OCD.
Right.
And I think I struggle in leaning into that, but it's something that I'm definitely wanting to go into more and curious about.
Right.
And it's now that I'm learning about the energetics of life, because we're all energy.
Do you feel like having a daughter has assisted in leaning into that more?
Yes and no. No, because my daughter's only 7 months old. So I'm like fully in like the toddler newborn mom phase. And I'm just like,
but even how just in my external like, viewpoint of your situation, there's an there's definitely a difference between how you were, and maybe I think part of that's probably firstborn to secondborn, but your firstborn is a boy and you have a son as your older child, and now you have this daughter as your second child, and I do see so much more of a softness with you.
Yeah. I do feel though too, there's so many layers to that.
Yeah, for sure.
Because the way I felt with the first child, which we'll get into, I'm sure in like other episodes when we talk about like motherhood and stuff like that, there was a conscious decision to also like apply more of that softness this time around, because I knew that the other way just wasn't working for me.
Right.
So yeah, that's like a really great question.
Sorry to cut you off. It just kind of popped into my head.
No, it's like, true.
Especially because now I've been spending 2 weeks consistently living in the same house with you and your two children. And I'm like, oh, wow. Because having the experience of you going through motherhood with your firstborn, motherhood with me, I have 2 girls. Yeah. And it was complete. Like, that's why they say no children have the same parents.
What do you mean?
No child has the same set of parents.
Oh, like even siblings, you mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Because who
different
you are,
versions of the parents. Yeah.
Right. Because who you are when you parent your first is a completely different version of you as when you parent your second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever. But not to get off track too much, but the question came into my mind because you said that softness is something that you kind of have to think about more, or like try to bring into your life more. But I'm seeing you naturally do it more now.
Oh, that's so sweet. That's such a great compliment. Yeah. It's funny because I feel like culturally, for instance, like my background and upbringing, and even just in society, like today, you see it no matter whether you're in the West or the East, like productivity and contribution is such a valued thing. Like you even see with daycare going back to work 6 weeks. Some moms are ready for it because they need to have that time to themselves. And we briefly touched upon that before, where you get kind of that separation and that break. But I did want to ask you a question, which was kind of like alongside the same themes, was like, do you think that there was like a time specifically when you felt really in touch with your femininity, and that was like a moment that was like a defining moment for you, like, oh, this feels really freeing for me?
For sure. So I think, there was a period of time in my life where I think that everything felt freeing for me because I literally surrendered to the universe. When I lived in Australia for 5 months, I moved to Indonesia for a month and lived literally in the middle of the jungle. I'm talking like I did not own a pair of shoes. There was no like physical home over top of my head. It was an elevated bed off of the floor in the middle of the mountains in the jungle. And I really chose to dedicate that time to tuning into myself so deeply to try and understand mostly what my feminine essence was. Because I think that leading up to that, I, like you said, you know, living in Toronto, such a big city, working constantly, and like success and money and productivity was the goal. It was that was always the goal. Like, how can I be best at my job?
It's the buzzing energy down there too, right? It's like busy hustle.
The hustle bustle, the constant like who's going to make more money, who's going to be the most successful. Like you, without even thinking or knowing it or feeling like it, like you are constantly feeling like, oh, I have to be better than the girl next to me in order to be the best at my job. And so when I completely extracted myself from that and went to the polar opposite environment and lived in the middle of the jungle, and it was 500 degrees, it felt like every day. So I was in, you know, little to no clothing. Not that that's a factor, but it was a little bit in terms of like me tuning into my femininity, because my body was very much involved in that process. And I stripped myself of everything, of my culture, of my diet, of my standard daily practices of like doing my hair and makeup. There's no hair and makeup. There wasn't even a mirror.
You remember you came home and you were so convinced
person.
you were going to shave your head.
Yeah, I thought
because at that point you're like, my hair is so, you had that revelation. You're like, my hair is so connected to my femininity, my identity of myself.
Like, who
I'm going to
I?
shave it to challenge myself. But then, you know, it's just as quick as an instance of coming back into a cultural position where instantly that's something that's valued and rewarded.
And I felt like I couldn't.
Yeah.
So I think that having that time to be so free and liberated to experience and feel anything I wanted to without having a single iota of connection to my visual appearance. It was just
something you didn't focus on.
No, there was no mirror there.
And there's no reason to.
No, because anyone that lived in the middle of the jungle, which was very few beings, the monkeys saw me naked more than anything. But it was a very liberating experience, and it was a very moving experience in terms of like reconnecting with my deepest parts of myself. And it was not until I was able to experience that that I came home and realized my value, if that makes sense, as a woman in a whole new way. Because how I placed my value on myself prior to that experience was probably very much physical, very much visual, very much like a more tangible thing. But after having this experience, it was totally the opposite. It was energetic, like who I am as a woman, as a female, and my feminine energy and essence was strictly like.
But do you find that changed once you got back? Like, did it go back
over time? Over time, I'm sure like those external influences penetrated and seeped in slowly to where the physical portion of it came into play again. Absolutely. But I think what it did is that it laid these small bricks within my own foundation of myself that have never left. So even though I've had the experiences of definitely things being more physical, and I'm sure that every woman can relate to this, like relating to the fact that you feel so much, especially in today's day and age. I mean, what do we see every time we're scrolling on our phone? Every time we're researching something, is how do people look? And you know, I saw this really interesting fact or quote or whatever it was, but it was basically saying like human brains are not designed to see their reflection as often as we do.
Yes.
Human beings are designed to only see their reflection at a glimpse when we're looking into a body of water, such as a pond or a river, a still river or something like that. We are not designed to see our reflection as much as we do.
So here's my new question. Why do you think so many women today struggle with embracing their femininity?
I think it's a combination of things. I think that there's so many parts to answering that question. Number one is I think that we are inundated with the image of what we should be externally. Mm-hmm. Number two is we are not supported societally in terms of what we bring to the table with our innate values and innate powers and abilities. Our culture is so focused and driven on productivity and success in terms of finances or productivity in the workspace. And I think that women are taken out of place. We are taken out of those slow, intentional, intuitive flow of where we should be and where we thrive the most. And we are boxed into the rest of the world, which is if you are not productive, then you hold no space here. If you are not productive, then you hold no value here. And so
while looking
and you must be perfect and youthful and beautiful, and you're not allowed to age, and you're not allowed to complain.
So you have to have all of those things.
And right, not to mention, just like we brought up in a previous episode, and
we'll continue to
for forever, but also hope to have honestly a whole season dedicated to this, because this is probably what I'm most passionate about. But we are on a 28-day cycle.
Yeah.
And for any human being to expect a female who is on a 28-day or, any kind of menstrual cycle to be somebody that they're not in, the phase that they're not in.
Explain that a bit more.
The female cycle is 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Each week has its own characteristics and its own hormonal fluctuations and hormonal fluctuations. And every single hormone that is released from your reproductive organs into your bloodstream goes directly to your brain. And your brain, depending on which hormones it is interacting with, receiving and releasing, it's going to function different. And when it functions different, we have been trained as women to ignore it. We have been trained in our society to say, well, it doesn't fucking matter because I still need to go to work today and produce what I produced last week when I was in my luteal phase or when I was in my ovulatory phase. Well, guess what? That is not how we function.
I know.
We are, again.
And you're trained to almost like keep it secret, like act as though nothing's happened, right? Like, you know how like phrases are accepted, like, oh, she's just, I hate this, just on her rag. The amount of, think about the guys that we grew up with in our town that would use that phrase, she's on her rag. It is so gross. And it's just like, oh, she's a bitch because she's must be on her rag. And it's just like a negative, like, spit to the side. Like, don't even pay attention to her because she's like less than.
Also, hate to break it to you, but if it weren't for me bleeding every month, you wouldn't exist. If it weren't
big idea at a time, Briana.
if it weren't for me bleeding every month, there would be no more life beyond us.
Yeah.
And it's just like, anyways, that's like its whole own topic, and we'll get into that hopefully, like I said, for a whole season at some point with phenomenal guests that we have lined up. But for now, we'll stay on topic about the femininity. And to circle back to all of it, I just think that it is extremely challenging when we are put in a world, in a society, and in a position where we are expected to focus on drive, productivity, and that's where value is held so deeply within our culture and our true essence. And I think in order for our true femininity to thrive and flourish, is to not focus on the productivity, but to tune into that cycle and our intuition and things like that.
You like said something earlier, how it's just like the way that society and culture is kind of set up is it's being highly visual, the representation of femininity.
Absolutely.
And kind of having those external pressures and beauty standards. As much as social media has played a huge and is playing a huge and will continue to play a huge role in the misconstruction of that word and abuse almost.
Yeah.
In that being a very visual representation and misunderstanding of the word. I also feel like social media at the same time too is bringing forward a lot more voices who can properly articulate and celebrate the true essence of what femininity really is and educate people and offer solutions and embrace what that is. So I feel like kind of a way to embrace femininity is by not only finding another woman or other men who even are feminine, but other people who are feminine and supporting them or following along their journey and kind of tapping into how they express that and celebrating those features and those attributes, and also recognizing that femininity does lie on a spectrum. Like it really isn't one way of living. It isn't one way of representing that word, but it's also embracing it as a part of your cycle and life, because we are cyclic beings.
Yeah.
The world runs, nature runs in cycles. There's nothing that's like on all the time.
Right.
Unless you live in the Caribbean.
And they're chill all the time.
And that's why. No, but there's always a season. There's always a change. There's a time for introspection. There's a time for flourishing. And alongside with that masculine energy that we value so much and praise and encourage and emphasize in society and in our culture, specifically here in the West, it is so harmonious to lean into that side of that femininity.
Yeah.
But it's also, I think it starts with just kind of like having a simple understanding of what that looks like.
But I think that a good place to jump from there is finding the right role models.
Yes.
Like, I think that it's so easy for women, especially young girls, but for all women, honestly. My point being is that even as a full-grown adult woman with children, like when I'm looking out into the world, who are my role models?
Who are they?
Like really, who are my mom is a massive role model to me. My mom is phenomenal.
That's amazing.
Like I feel so blessed, so grateful to have a mom that I can look up to in so many ways.
Well, like let's say not in your close circle. If you're on social media, like let's say a lot of people don't have a close connection to their mother. Like if you were just on social media and you're younger, well, let's just say you, for instance, as an example, do you have anybody on social media that you look at when you see them like that woman is in their femininity or man, and you're like, I love that and admire that, and that opens it up within you? Who would that be?
I do. I'm, as you know, obviously extremely immersed and involved in the spiritual world. Sue Morter would be a role model for me. She is... Her practices and her courses and her coaching and what she represents is she's a feminine woman in my opinion, yet she has dedicated her life to helping all humans like elevate to their truest potential energetically and spiritually and tune into their most authentic selves. And so for me, that's someone that I obviously would see as a role model. My spiritual coach, Cathy.
Oh, shout out to Cathy Roseborough. Love.
We wouldn't be sitting
She's
in these seats.
She's unofficially my spiritual coach.
Yeah.
Too.
If it wasn't for her, we would not be sitting here.
Yeah.
Because she is, I believe, like the most authentic representation of being kind and soft in her messaging of the polarity of the male and the female.
So true. So well said.
She is non-judgmental and has educated me and and reaffirmed what I've felt within my own belief systems, which is there is such a polarity between male and female and feminine and masculine, but in a way that should be nurtured and in a way that should be supportive of one another.
I think your range is so good because you pick somebody who is very personal in your life, like your close circle of women. That's your mother. Mm-hmm. Second is somebody you don't know personally, is a social media person.
Yeah.
And then third is somebody that you are like, you're connected to, but she's not your family. She's not some like an influence on social media, but she's somebody that's impacted your life directly in terms of like your paths crossing. So I feel like having a broad range of women and influences are so important. And I think that's a great example of showing that it's like, hey, if you don't have somebody in your family, that's fine. You can still find somebody in social media. Sure. If you're not on social media, that's fine. It could be somebody in your life path that you may have met.
But also like it takes work. Like you can't, I don't think that we should expect to go out into the world and do no work and receive back what we're hoping for.
Like stand there with your hand out and wait.
Yeah. I think that that's such a misrepresentation of what life is all about. And when it comes to women, as much as we are soft and tender and loving and kind and nurturing and all of these things, it doesn't mean that we can't go out and ask for what we want. It doesn't mean that we can't go out and request from the universe. It doesn't mean that we can't go out and be productive and work hard and have all these attributes that may be seen as more masculine, but it's about, I think, finding the balance, tuning in and tapping into your deeper feminine self, and then orchestrating your life based on from that place. So when you are productive, when you are going out there to work, to function, to, orchestrate your life, it's from a deeper feminine place.
So what's one of the biggest things you think that you have applied to your life that has allowed you to really connect to and embrace that feminine side of you?
That's a really hard question to answer.
Good one.
It is a good one. I feel as though in recent years it's been more challenging.
Yeah.
Which is ironic because now I have 2 daughters. But I think that for me, what happened when I had kids was I felt like I had to work so hard.
I was going to say it had to play a role in your identity for sure, becoming a mother as well. So that also shifts you.
Yeah. And same to you.
I want to hear your answer and then I want to tell you what I've seen in you.
Oh, shift. Interesting. Yeah. So I feel like since having children, I have built such a deeper inner strength that I actually never knew could exist within me. I literally didn't know that part of me existed. And I'm not talking about like, oh, when you're a mom, like you love your kids and you have this love that you didn't know, which is also true. But I'm talking like this strength where after Aubrey was born, my first daughter, I swear I felt like if a truck came barreling at me, I would have just fucking pushed it away with my hand. I was like, I can take on anything. Like no one can mess with me. No one can.
That's funny because that seems like a physical strength, right? Almost like a masculine trait.
And yet it was from like the depths of my body and soul, like the most
mother bear
powerful. Yeah. The most powerful feeling I've ever felt was becoming a mom. Mm-hmm. And since now, of course, that my kids are almost 5 and 2.5, it's almost only now that I feel I'm taking the time and I have the time and I have the energy and have the opportunity to now tune back into the softer side of my feminine self. And so that I don't even know if I answered the question.
For me, when I look at you and I see how you've really come into, also just from like learning the connection to femininity and what that whole concept means, looking in at you, because sometimes it's a little bit easier to kind of like look at somebody from the outside than to analyze ourselves.
Of course.
I mean, probably a lot of times it's easier. For me, I really see you setting, like, you have this empowerment about you, which is, I think, how you kind of describe that with you and Aubrey and becoming a mother. Like, you really make sure that you know the difference between feeling empowered and not.
Right.
You're not just living in a state of low battery and like emptiness. You're just, you know the difference when you are and when you're not, and when something's off.
Yeah.
And you're able to call that out a lot easier versus just kind of accepting that this is life and you're in this space and this is what it is. And you're kind of staying in this frequency. You're able to really choose those things. And the second thing would be your boundaries. Like, I really see you setting boundaries within yourself, within your life, within your choices, and you just have like a hard line, and that goes for any part of your life.
Yeah.
But I also think that comes with like age and experience too. And I think a lot of times, like, you can teach and advise somebody younger than you, and like, I think that comes natural from a parent to a child. You want to naturally give them your life lessons and give them advice to avoid things, to prevent pain that you may have experienced in your life or avoid issues. But I feel like it's so necessary for a human's pathway to just experience their own versions of those traits.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for you, I would say I really see you embracing your femininity by putting down those boundaries, which also is interestingly seems like a masculine trait, because you're just putting a hard stop to things, like a hard no, versus feminine, which is like more flowy and go with the fluid and whatever. But it's like you know when it's going to affect you energetically, and when it does, you stop.
Well, and also I feel like that is the essence. First of all, thank you. Thanks.
Just the truth.
So I appreciate the observation and the all that. But it's I don't know if ironic is the right way to describe it, but the way you said it, like having that boundary and putting a stop to things. But it is almost feminine, because
it's very feminine.
Because when you want to be your truest self as a feminine woman, you do not accept or receive anything that will make you feel less than. You will not accept or receive anything that makes you feel you have to protect yourself. You will not receive or accept anything that puts you in a state of having to hold a masculine energy. So you just have to,
or just like conceal it, show face, show up, ignore.
Which, listen, when you're a mom, you have to do that. Sometimes you just gotta cry in a fucking pantry for a minute.
Oh my God, there's so many spectrums.
Get it together and leave. But in terms of like the bigger picture, macro scale here, holding boundaries, although it seems like abrupt and firm and stark and more masculine, it's probably the best thing you can do for your feminine energy, because you must protect it, but in a way that is still feminine. Like what a oxymoron. But I think that one of the difficulties and one of the challenges is that our society and our culture does not create a space that is supportive of vulnerability.
So how would you live more in alignment with your feminine essence? Really? How can you begin to?
I mean, this is just my own opinion. I'm not a specialist on anything, and I'm still discovering the answer to that question. I think that I'm still on a journey very much of trying to find ways to live in my most authentic feminine essence. But I do know that being vulnerable is courageous. And living and functioning from a state of authenticity, love, and vulnerability is the best thing that you can do for yourself as a human. That's not just for women. That is for everyone. And I believe so deeply that if we could start a conversation that trickled and rippled into the world of accepting and allowing and holding space for vulnerability, the feminine energy and essence of our planet would grow, and humans would be nurtured.
And you know, another big one I think is releasing that pressure. And I think maybe I'm saying this because it's highly connected to my own self, but releasing that pressure for perfectionism and allowing yourself to sit into the process and the rest and the slowness alongside that ambitious side.
So how do you feel like you do that? Because you are very much A-type personality.
Yes.
Slightly OCD.
Yes.
You were raised by 2 German parents that are very, you know, like productivity, very much like disciplined, like let me see what you're doing. So for you, how would you say, coming from that experience and being who you are and how you were raised, how do you feel like you are finding avenues to best balance that?
I would really say having to unlearn the normalness, being norm, because that was my normal,
of course,
and really leaning into the self-care, because I feel like with me and my career, like I really was starting with makeup and beauty and self-care rituals and stuff. So like that's, and just being a woman too, that's something that's celebrated and encouraged and taught now, especially with social media. And that being like an area of focus in business and studies for me, that was just something where I naturally kind of started to explore and lean into. So I would say really letting myself enjoy a self-care without making me feel like it's something that I feel guilty for doing, and making it kind of a necessity, like taking a bath, you know, like having to plan and prepare for that and make sure things are set to the side and someone can watch the kids so I can have a 20-minute. And then when I'm in there being like, okay, I'm done. Like I should get out and get back to it, you know, and I did a lot and still do have those mental battles. But then also, I mean, I haven't had my period for a very long time because we were talking about this earlier, but with being pregnant and having kids and breastfeeding for like the last 3-4 years, really learning and honoring my cycle. So I'm excited to get my period again and like really understand the follicular phase, the menstrual phase, like the scientific science behind the phases, and then also the energetic science behind those phases, and then really tracking where I am and aligning my approach to it and hormone fluctuation, but also like my lifestyle to the phase that I'm in, and embracing that. And then also, because of my history and career choices in the past, of it being a very physical representation of beauty and makeup and all that stuff, external validations, kind of changing my relationship to those rituals as well, that being a different type of ritual and more of like an approach of being a more adornment situation when it comes to beauty and the body and understanding the changes that come with it. And then also I have this strong urge to tell other women about it and teach other women about it. And I think that's kind of like how my path has navigated into here and where we are today because of all of those interests. So that's kind of how I deal with it now. And yeah, I also feel like now my parents have become very much more lackadaisical Germans because they've been so westernized now for so many years,
and they're a little bit older,
and then they just don't give a shit.
It might
anymore.
have to do a little bit with their age,
and they can't really tell me what to do anymore. So
although do they though?
Do they? But yeah. So
but I love your answer. I have loved watching you grow, and it's been so interesting to see you go through the phases of your life from an external perspective. Just like you were saying, like sometimes, of course, not sometimes, always you can see someone else's life from a totally different perspective from within yourself. So to hear you answer that is great. But you know, I'm proud of you for doing so many things and making adjustments and allowing yourself to accept certain things and letting go of some of the pressure.
Yeah.
You still have a lot of it. You still have a lot of it.
But it's self-pressure these days.
Well, and it's also pressure around things that bring you joy. It's not pressure around things that you feel like you have to do maybe as more as it is like, well, I have to do it, but the end goal is towards something that I really love and believe in and all these things.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like that's a great key takeaway from this episode is to kind of like, I think we said this for the last episode actually, is to really analyze those feelings and those moments that bring you those feelings.
Joy.
And then
work at that.
Start to work.
Put your energy at that.
Because you know what? If having microbladed brows and having attention and, you know, getting all the benefits from those things physically really brings you that authentic joy, and it will continue to bring that joy even when you age, because
if microbladed
whatever, I'm just saying like a physical trait, you know,
joy. Get that shit microbladed, baby.
Like when we get a spray tan, like we got it, and we're like, oh my God, I feel like I can do anything.
For sure. We both have microbladed blah, 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 blah. That's a tongue twister.
But you have to think long term.
Yeah.
You have to think, I'm like, oh my God, you never think you're going to age. Like I never think I'm going to look older than I'm 34. But if I was 24 and I'm looking at myself now, I'm just like, oh my God, 34 is,
you look this
historic. You know, like it's, what are those things called? Like dinosaurs, like the prehistoric, like it's
prehistoric.
Like if I remember when I was younger and I was in school and I was like, I'm going to pretend I'm 17 because that is so old. And I was like, 17, you're a baby.
How cute.
A baby.
How cute.
Anyway.
17.
You
know, I think that the major takeaways from today is there's a few things.
Yeah.
I think that number one is, I think that each and every individual has to redefine what femininity is for them and what the feminine energy and essence is for them. And then I think that once we can get to a place where we can truly understand what that is, we have to begin to embrace the vulnerability that comes along with that and the self-expression that will come out of that. I think that embracing the vulnerability is actually one of the most powerful things we can do for ourselves, because like I said earlier, I believe, and I tell my children this and I tell my husband this, vulnerability is a superpower. Mm-hmm. It is one of the most courageous things that you can do.
Yeah.
And so I think that as women, that is one of our superpowers that we are born with. So we must tune into that more. And we must truly have the self-expression to be so authentic within that vulnerability that it's actually powerful. It's actually the opposite of vulnerability. It's actually the most powerful thing that we've got going. And from there, I mean, we got to celebrate it. Like, let's just not make this some like deep, as much as it is like this deep innate feeling in something that we have to tune into, but let's celebrate it. Like celebrate the femininity, celebrate being vulnerable, celebrate believing and tuning in and tapping into and following your intuition. Let's celebrate, you know, wanting to wear a skirt or throw on some pink lipstick if that's what femininity is for you. Let's celebrate, you know, dancing to a certain song or, you know, speaking a certain way or cooking a certain way. Whatever.
Who cares?
Yeah, like whatever femininity is for you, celebrate it. Because it does not know what anyone else thinks about it does not matter. It literally doesn't matter. What you believe femininity is for you.
That makes me so curious. I want to know, I feel like you guys, we would love to hear from you, first of all, and come message us on social media, give us a DM or just comment on the show wherever, just get in touch with us somehow. What is your expression of femininity and how do you celebrate that or how do you embrace that and what do you think that is or what does that look like to you? Like, let's start this conversation going. Let's inspire other women and even just ideas and concepts to kind of just play with that.
Agreed.
Let us know. So
I think that, you know, it's such a broad topic. We hope to dive into it deeper as the seasons go on. And, you know, if there's any particular branch or aspect of any of our topics that you feel would be so much appreciated that we dive deeper into, we're always open. So please let us know that as well. But
yes,
women, men alike, we love you. We're sending all of our feminine energy your way. And we hope to hear from you. Find us on all social platforms and all hosting platforms for both visual and audio podcasts.
At the Honey Toast Podcast.
And we hope you tune in next week for a new episode around deep healing. And there are all the avenues that come along with that. And again, there's probably going to be several seasons.
Yeah. These topics are
broad,
just really think about these as like our
overview.
pillars for the seasons coming up, because we really want to give you guys a taste of like what you can expect with a podcast and what kind of topics we're going to be talking about. But there's like, these are our umbrellas. We're feeling a trickle. So get under our umbrella, catch the vibe, catch our drizzle. Honey Bee and Drizzle D out.